And this one.
Hi guys, this is Dr. Brian out from Op Family Chiropractic doing our monthly webinar. And this topic that we're going to be talking about today is on PCOS, fibroids, and endometriosis. So we're going to dive deeper into these three things. The fibroids and endometriosis will be a little more related to each other compared with the PCOS. So these are some of the more common issues that females have when it comes to reproductive organ issues there. So let's talk about estrogen. So where's it made of, or where's it made from? So made in the ovaries and fat tissue. That's why some of these issues occur in females. Responsible for secondary sex characteristics. We balance estrogen with progesterone. We've talked about that balance, that ratio. So when you are getting some blood tests looking at the progesterone estrogen ratio, has some roles also with anxiety, calmness, things like that. Obviously infertility, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. So when you have an imbalance between progesterone and estrogen, it often leads to obesity, cardiovascular disease, which in women is often deadly. The first sign of a heart attack for a female is often the last sign. Autoimmune diseases, breast cancer, and osteoporosis are other things that with this imbalance occurs. So let's talk about excess estrogen first. Okay. So what are some of the symptoms when it comes to excess estrogen? And many females have a lot of these things going on, right? So we have bloating, often during the cycle time, cervical dysplasia, depression with anxiety. So you can have depression on both ends of the spectrum. But when it comes to anxiety, typically excess estrogen will drive the more anxiousness. Breast cancer, uterine cancer, fatigue often. We have headaches, heavy menstrual periods, hypothyroidism, estrogen. We've talked about that previously in other videos. So if you want to check out a few other videos on our YouTube, Facebook page as well, we've talked about excess estrogen and how it affects the thyroid. Actually, what estrogen does is it binds thyroid hormone, so you don't have enough available to actually be useful. Mood swings, irritability, poor sleep, water retention, so it goes along with that. Bloating, waking in the hips, abdomen, and thighs, which is never very fun for females. Panic attacks, that goes along with the anxiety. If you have a lot of estrogen and then low progesterone issues, a lot of panic attacks, and then of course the infertility issues. So let's dive deep into what really causes some of this, okay? Often low fiber diets, right? So we're not able to go to the bathroom every day. Fiber helps to break down, helps us eliminate the excess estrogen, because during the other times of the month, you are pooping estrogen out. So guys, same thing. So low fiber diets, the average person is only getting about 5 to 6 grams of fiber per day. And you should be getting about 25 to 35 grams, if not more. So there's where that becomes a big issue. Environmental estrogens, we've done a bunch of videos on toxic environments. So pesticides, heavy metals, those are two big ones. Hair and skincare products, another big area that we really want to clean up. Our constipation, that goes with the hypothyroidism, the low fiber diet. Impaired elimination and breakdown by the liver of estrogen, so that leads to that. Gallbladder dysfunction, we did a webinar on that and how that affects estrogen. So if you don't have a gallbladder, we need to do some things to help with breaking down that estrogen by using some bile salts. Lack of exercise, so strength training is usually the big one. When you're just pounding away on a treadmill, often it just leads to making you more skinny fat. So we need to do some strength training there. Taking too much estrogen, like for hormone replacement therapy or birth control. We've done, if you search our Facebook page or our YouTube channel for birth control pills and what it does to your body, it robs you of your health. So birth control pills is 100 times more stronger than your normal estrogen that your body makes. So that tells you a bunch of different things about that. And lastly, insulin insensitivity and diabetes. So if you got all this weight gain, typically you become more insulin sensitive and leading to diabetes. So that will lead to excess estrogen, and that leads us into the big issue, and we're going to talk about PCOS first. Okay. So, all right, so the big issue, what is it? Well, we don't really know. We know how to diagnose it, but we don't know what it really is. So when we diagnose it, when you go to the doctor, they'll take some blood and they'll look at your androgens, your male sex hormones, so like testosterone. If you got an increase in testosterone, that's one of the things that it's needed to be diagnosed with PCOS. Ovulatory dysfunction, so that becomes an issue with ovaries, and then the cysts, of course. So those are the three things, and you need to have two of the three. You're seeing more and more now that they're actually just diagnosing people without all three of those, and just having those issues with like the diabetes, the elevated insulin issues, actually elevated testosterone. They'll just say, "Yep, okay, you have PCOS," and trying to then do some things with it going forward. So where does the problem really begin? Well, number one, insulin. So insulin is the big issue when it comes to PCOS, or elevated insulin levels. So this is why PCOS is associated with diabetes and heart disease. So somebody who has PCOS often will have to be put on diabetic medication, and then they go on cholesterol and heart medication. So now they're on 5 to 6 different medications besides some hormone stuff just to help control this PCOS issue. And it's really not helping the issue just with the elevated estrogen there. So what this does is it leads to an increase in LH and a decrease in FSH. Okay. So this leads to that increase in testosterone. So you can see why they do all these tests to help with the diagnosis there. So there's where that comes into it. Insulin also decreases sex hormone binding globulin, which leads to an increase in more free testosterone. So now there's where you start to get the PCOS, the elevated androgens there, okay? So from there, when you get this, now we get a increase in estrogen. Okay? So an increase in estrogen then we get this feedback loop back up to insulin, and so you can just see where this whole thing starts to just snowball, and we just continue on the path. So some of the things that create some of this elevated insulin issue, right? So one of the big ones is going to be dietary issues. The other big thing that we're going to talk about first is inflammation. Okay, inflammation, PCOS. So where is this coming from? Gut, right? So all disease starts in the gut. So we get an imbalance of good and bad bacteria in the gut, and that creates the inflammatory issue, and that inflammation then ruins the gut, leads to insulin insensitivity. Oops. Which is one of the hallmarks, obviously, of the PCOS issue. Okay, so elevated insulin is sensed by the body, and then it increases that testosterone level, like we talked about, which is one of the hallmarks for PCOS. Okay, so what do we do with this cycle? How do we break the cycle? Well, we want to reduce the inflammation, fix the gut, and help your body become more insulin sensitive. Okay, so treatment. Let's talk about that. So when we talk about treatment, we're really going to be speaking to more of the issues when it comes to natural ways to do it. So non-medicated ways to do this. Okay, so treatment. So lifestyle, right? Diet, right? Okay. So some of the things you can do, paleo, right? Keto, exercise, which we talked about. Some more strength training, right? Building muscle mass. Balanced. So I just always like to say eating real food. Okay? So when you eat food that God makes, typically you can control your blood sugar pretty well. So if you're eating out of a box, out of a bag, things like that, that's where you start to get a lot of these issues. Okay, so exercise, strength training. Why is that the case? So insulin likes to go to your leg muscles first. So our ancestors used to forage for food, run after things, try to search for food. So they were constantly walking. So when we talk about 10,000 steps a day, what do you think our ancestors were doing? So that insulin level is driving the glucose down into the legs so that they could continue on for that day. So the more leg muscle mass you have, often you will have a better insulin response. The more muscle you have, the more the insulin is going to drive glucose into the muscles because that's where it wants to be. So that's why strength training is super important. What are some of the things that we can do naturally for supplementation? So once you always got to fix the lifestyle first, right? So no matter what, you can supplement till you're blue in the face, but if you don't fix some of the things that you're eating, putting on your body, all those types of things, we need to really be good at that before we start loading up with a bunch of different things that can help push you over the edge and get you to be better faster, right? Okay, so one of the things, myo-inositol. So this is something we like to use for insulin issues, PCOS, getting that under control. Really good with PCOS issue people. A lot of studies showing this, so myo-inositol was super good. I like to use berberine before meals because it helps with that insulin spike. Often people will spike up their insulin or it's a delayed spike. That's another issue. And so they get this roller coaster of blood sugar issues. So berberine helps to keep that blood sugar spike at a minimum so you can continue on and not get that hangry issue or elevated blood sugar to a decrease in blood sugar. So you're going from hypo to hyper. So we can keep you at an even blood sugar level. That's always way better. Some other ones are really good. Fenugreek, really good for that. Also shown to help because it controls insulin. It can help increase testosterone levels. Cinnamon, really good as well. That's why the one supplement that I use with berberine has cinnamon in it. Chromium has a long history of being helpful for diabetics and insulin insensitivity. So these are some things. Other things that I like to use, glutamine. The most abundant amino acid in your body. So when we're looking at controlling insulin, protein is really good for that a lot of times. And glutamine helps in a couple different ways. A, muscle repair. B, gut repair. So gut lining repair. But helps people lose weight because of the increase in protein that you are using. Branched chain amino acids, also another thing because it also helps you build muscle. So when you're strength training, glutamine and branched chain amino acids are super important for that. Fish oil, right? So if we need to decrease inflammation, fish oil is super good. Long history of being very, very helpful. A lot of different studies. So the EPA portion of that. Vitamin D. There's a ton of people being vitamin D deficient. That leads to weight gain just by itself because it's going to slow down about 3,000 different reactions in your body besides your immune system. And then probiotics. So probiotics have an interesting role in in your weight gain, weight loss ability. So there's a balance between a couple different groups of probiotics or groups of bacteria in your gut that can, if that balance gets out of whack, then you can start to gain weight and have less of an ability to lose weight. So probiotics are super good. They also will help with balancing your immune system, so the inflammatory process. Obviously, other things that it can be very good for is stopping a leaky gut as well too. So there's certain probiotics that are super good for that. So those are some of the ways that we want to look at helping people change their lifestyle, get over this PCOS thing, because it's really more about insulin than anything else. So that's where that will help people get better when it comes to that. All right, let's talk about the fibroids and endometriosis. Okay. So fibroids is more of an estrogen-dependent, an inflammatory disorder when it comes to the difference between the two. Endometriosis is more of a systemic effect from estrogen dominance and inflammation. So they both, there's always going to be some inflammatory condition or inflammatory process that's going to happen. So because inflammation is the symptom coming from the excess estrogen from these two. Okay, so with endometriosis, we'll get painful periods, infertility, irregular cycles, and painful sexes. And fibroids, you get the fibrotic tissue within there. Okay, so let's talk about inflammation and estrogen dominance. We've talked so inflammation and estrogen dominance. Okay. Okay, so what this does is it increases an enzyme called aromatase. Okay, this leads to the growth in fibroids. And endometriosis tissue. So when they start taking tissue out or scraping the endometriosis tissue out, they're really not addressing the aromatase issue. What happens with aromatase? Let's talk about that a little bit more, because you often see drug commercials now talk about aromatase inhibitors when it's dealing with cancers. Okay. Because what aromatase does is it takes your testosterone and converts it into estrogen. So testosterone is important in proper levels. Obviously, if you have an insulin issue and you've got PCOS, then we need to deal with more of the insulin and not the testosterone level. So testosterone's obviously your muscle mass, your energy level, your ability to heal. So all types of things. So if you're taking all that away, you're going to see where weight gain starts to come on. You're going to lose muscle mass. All that's going to start to lead to an excess of estrogen. So some of the things that will increase this is going to be pesticides, hormone disrupting chemicals. So this is all your personal hygiene products, plastics. So there's a very interesting scientist who did a study on one of the pesticides called atrazine that showed that male frogs were able to eventually mate with each other. So due to this aromatase increase, so they actually started to develop female sex organs and were able to mate with each other. So and whatever happens in nature is eventually going to start to happen in our world as well, because we're not that far from those. Okay, so I guess if you're females and you obviously wanted males to now to be able to mate with each other, that would be a bad thing, I think, in this world. But you guys often say that having us go through childbirth would be a really good thing. So yeah, aromatase is a big issue. So if we can control this, decrease it while cleaning up our environment, often we will get rid of these types of things. So let's talk about ways we can help with fibroids and endometriosis. Okay, so treatment plan. Once again, what does it always start with? Lifestyle, right? And diet. Okay. So we need to clean up the environment of those chemicals. So eat organic food, looking at your hair, skincare products, getting rid of plastics in your household as much as you can. If you have amalgam in your mouth, getting that taken out by a biological dentist so that it's done properly. We need to eat cruciferous vegetables. There's something called sulforaphane that's really good for helping with reducing the toxic load in people, reducing cancer risk. It's what's in broccoli, so super good for that. Good fats, obviously protein, super important for building blocks of muscle. We need to improve that insulin sensitivity. So all through that, increasing the fiber in our body as well too. So we talked about the 5 grams that most people are getting a day, where we should be getting 5 to 35 grams per day. That would improve weight loss ability. And then we need to do strength training. And stress resiliency. Okay, so when people talk about stress, they often talk about just decreasing stress, and realistically, it's just really hard to decrease people's stress. You know, if they're in a situation that they really need to get out of, yes, that's something they really need to do. But our day-to-day stress that is just building and building and building, we need to become more stress resilient to that. Strength training is one thing. We want to work on the estrogen issues here, and that will make you more stress resilient as well. So we need to work on lifestyle and diet first. Okay. Next, we need to start to poop right. Okay. So getting rid of the estrogen is vitally important to this whole process. So we talked about the fiber. Fiber helps you go to the bathroom better on a regular basis. If somebody tells you that it's okay to go to the bathroom every 3 days to 7 days, that's not right. If you eat every day, which you should be pooping every day. The average transit time for food should be anywhere from 18 to 22, 24 hours, okay? So you can easily gauge your transit time by eating beets, write down the time, see when the beets come out on the other end, so your poop will be more reddish. Activated charcoal, do the same thing, write down the time. When your stool comes out more black, then you write down then when that first appearance comes, and so you know what your transit time is, okay? And if you're constipated, it's slow, right? So we got to figure out why that's the issue. So increase fiber. We need to improve bile production and flow. So if you don't have a gallbladder, that's why this is super important for this. There's a good correlation between no gallbladder and female reproductive issues. So increasing bile, because bile helps break down the estrogen. So improve liver detoxification. Estrogen is broken down in the liver and then finished off by the bile. Bile is also a soap, so it helps clean up the environment. So we want to do gallbladder, bile, liver function. So a couple of supplements that I like: calcium, Calcium D-glucarate is really good at keeping estrogen inside the colon, so it's not able to get out and escape into the system again. And then estrogen really likes tissues, so fat tissue, thyroid tissue. So those are a couple of places where it likes to be housed. When you start thinking about your fat tissue, it's really an organ because it houses toxins, estrogen, and it can become very, very inflammatory in nature. So calcium D-glucarate, this helps you poop out your estrogen. Indole-3 carbinol, otherwise known as I3C, it improves the breakdown of estrogen. So if we have bonds that we can't break down because we don't have this indole-3 carbinol, but eating a diet that's rich in vegetables, then bonds will stay together and you can't get rid of it. So if we do indole-3 carbinol, it helps us break down the estrogen better. DIM helps also. DIM is another good one. So that also these two kind of work together. So those are really good to do. This one is especially important because when we're thinking about how our estrogen is broken down and metabolized, 3 pathways that it can go down. So we have a 2-OH, a 4-OH, and a 16-OH. This is the one we want to drive, and that's what this does. This is the safe pathway to get rid of estrogen. This is cancer. This is your dementia and your osteoporosis. Okay, so we want to have as much of that as possible to push that 2 pathway, the safe pathway of getting rid of estrogen. Other things. So we got gallbladder, we got liver, we got some supplements that we want to use, and we got the diet and lifestyle. So gut health, right? So probiotics, always good. So typically, like we talked about, people who have these issues have poor gut health, they're constipated, they have circulating estrogen in their body, storing it in places they don't want it to be stored. So probiotics, improving that gut health. We talked about glutamine, which is super great for the gut health and gut lining, so to improve a leaky gut. We got fish oil, which is great for reducing inflammation, also good for your brain. We talked about vitamin D. We talked about berberine already to help with insulin issues. Okay, those are some good things. Also use berberine for an antimicrobial. So if we got a gut infection, it can kill kind of two birds with one stone. So for people wanting to get better really quickly, we like to do a liver detox and then a hormone, which is really more estrogen detox. So we like to use shakes with people in order to push the process a little bit faster. I know that they're going to get the nutrients that they need. People are way more successful rather than loading up a handful of pills. They can get all that they need in these shakes. We had some fiber, a little more fiber to it, so that we're starting to get our load of the fiber. And we always want to go slow with that, because if you give too much fiber to somebody right away, it ends up giving them even more constipation. So we don't want to give them a big brick in their gut as well. These things will help, obviously, if liver function is good, you break down your estrogens way better. And then we can use some things in this hormone balance shake that will help bind those estrogens even more and get rid of that. So those are 2 things that we can do to really push the process forward. So these are ways that we can definitely help people, females, get through and get over these things the natural way. So there's healthy ways to address these issues rather than going through some kind of unnecessary surgery or being on medications, because those always have drawbacks, obviously, and they really don't address the problem of insulin issues or estrogen dominant issues. So addressing those problems, they're not going away. They just, when you take a body part, an organ out, a system out, it's just going to then go to a different place. It's going to cause a different issue. You're going to have other things going on down the road. So we really want to be looking at ways to continue to do that, because you haven't looked upstream for the problem. So these are some things, and really looking at taking time to look at your overall health and what you can do at home right away. We talked about cleaning up the environment, changing some dietary things, going and doing some strength training rather than getting on an elliptical machine or a treadmill for hours. So building that muscle mass is really good. And one of the ways we like to help patients to do these things is have them schedule what's called a lifestyle evaluation. So there's some forms we have you fill out. We have you stand on we get an evaluation with our in-body assessment. So that gives us a lot of great information from the health of your cell to fat mass versus lean body mass. It gives us water inside the cell, outside the cell. So that's also how inflamed you are, how bloated it is, those types of things. So it gives us a marker to set some goals going forward. The lifestyle evaluation forms are great at determining what really is going on for your overall health. What's your stress level like? What stress identity are you? What is your high priority areas based on the questions that you answer? And then we put a plan together to really take control of your health. So that's really the thing that we like to do with our patients, because it really becomes a full body type issue. So if you're interested in those things, definitely reach out to us and sign up you can create an appointment with a lifestyle evaluation with me. The other things we want you to do is, if you're not ready to do that and you need to look at some more videos and follow us on Facebook, we talked about the YouTube channel that we have. There's plenty of information that you can use right away just to help yourself get better with those types of things. So yeah, utilize those. Definitely reach out to us if you do have questions. We always love to answer them, and we can start you getting back to being healthy again. So take this information, use it what you need. This is Dr. Brian out from Op Family Chiropractic. Thanks, guys.